We are back on Plateau TV. It is me, Eric. Hello. Joined by the best point man in the industry, Jay the Stingray.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, man. I am super psyched to talk to you about the 6 episodes of Lost you watched this past week. And to recap, just before we get into them, for our viewers, for the folks at home, those are Solitary, Raised by Another, All the Best Cowboys Have Daddy Issues, Whatever the Case May Be, Hearts and Minds, and Special. And these are episodes 9 through 15 of Lost's first season. So Jay, I just sort of overall, we're going to dig into each one of these. We're going to talk about them, but overall, how are you feeling? Are you grabbed yet?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really interested to see what they do going forward, because now we've got most of the backstories, or at least some, a little bit of why they were in Australia. But yeah, really looking forward to it.
It's kind of interesting because this actually batch of episodes is kind of the first time that it happens, but to that point about we have most of the backstories, I think it's sort of amusing how we've now doubled back on a couple characters before we've even gotten to introducing everybody, which I think it's just, from a story perspective, like I think, it's not like they're forcing it, but for example, and we can, again, we're going to get into spoilers into these episodes. So if you haven't watched these episodes of Lost, if you're still catching up with us, whatever the case may be, there you go. Puns. That's the other thing you get on this show. So we're gonna talk spoilers, but what I'll do is so the flashbacks. Remember, every episode of Lost is essentially a flashback for a particular character. That, for the most part, maybe some episodes might twist that a bit, but it's usually a character centric. So that's Saeed, Claire, and Walt, and then kind of Boone and Shannon. Really, Boone was the focus, but Shannon was in it. But Jack and Kate now have two flashback episodes. We've kind of gone back, and there's another Jack flashback and another Kate flashback. And at this point in the series, it's amusing that we still have not had a flashback for fan favorite Hurley. We don't know what his deal is. We haven't had one yet for... Is Hurley the only one outstanding now, actually? Well, actually, by the way, Special is Michael and Walt. I think Jin. I don't think Jin has had his episode yet.
Yeah, we had hers, sons.
Yeah.
But
so Hurley and Jin have not yet even had an episode, and we're already on part 2 of Jack and Kate. Again, it makes sense from a story perspective what's happening on the show, but it's just interesting.
Folks, right?
Yeah, it's just interesting. But I'm sorry. So how are you kind of feeling generally, Jay? Are you feeling like you're digging these characters? You said, I think it was either last week, the week before, that you typically have a hard time remembering names. Are you feeling even more comfortable with the cast now? Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's I'm glad we finally got some information on Michael and as well as Shannon and Boone. And Saeed as well, but I kind of figured Saeed's after the last when he tortured Sawyer. I kind of assumed it was something like that.
Yeah, Saeed had a little bit of foreshadowing, and again, this isn't even really It's not. There's nothing shadowy about it. I mean, he basically tells Sawyer, "I was a torturer," and then he tortures him. There wasn't a lot of ambiguity there. Now, again, obviously, his story fleshes that out. So, actually, why don't we? Let's dive in. Let's get into these then, because I'm, as I have been this entire process, I am jazzed. Again, Lost is my favorite show. Again, not necessarily in ranking, but in my heart. Lost is my favorite show.
can I do my predictions real quick?
Yes. Yeah. So before we dive into the first episode that we watched this week, Solitary, a Saeed flashback, Jay has been making predictions based on. So let me just clarity for the fans at home and maybe even for me. Are these predictions now based on what you have seen entirely up to this point, or from last week you made some predictions and now we're okay? All right.
Last week, but we've learned a lot about most of the characters prior to this, to these 6 episodes. So I don't have quite as many. It's really just a few. I still say that Hurley, I think he may have been a teacher. Okay. It's gonna be whatever his deal is something out of left field, I'm sure. And Shannon, I said divorced, previously in an abusive relationship, and I thought I was right, and then I come to find out I don't think I was right on that one.
Well, the abusive relationship qualified, I'd say.
And divorced, I think she was.
Well, no, she wasn't that, but I think you were in the ball. I'm willing to give you partial credit on that. I think you were in the ballpark.
And for Boone, I said was previously in a cult, and he's in recovery.
Man, you're going out there on some.
I'm just trying to think like the writers, man.
No, it's true. It's a good idea.
And the last one I have is Ethan. We get introduced to the new character Ethan, and I think that Ethan is Alex. The person that Danielle is calling for. Or asking, in different languages, where's Alex or something like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting. These are good. I love doing these predictions because if you are a Lost fan, if you've seen the show like I do, I sort of know where these things may land. If you haven't seen the show, if you're watching along with us, watching along with Jay, if you guys have predictions, please write them in the comments, add them to the live chat. We'd love to hear them. But those are good. Those are good. So, what was just before we dive into the specific episodes? Over this batch of episodes, were there any particular characters that jumped out at you? Is there anybody who's maybe their performance was really great? Like, wow, like that was a great turn in whatever the case may be. Kate really blew my socks off. Or, man, like, I don't know, Sawyer must have been eating bad craft services food. Like he sucked. Like he wasn't good. Anybody jump out at you in this batch?
Well, yeah. I mean, Kate really comes off like a pretty awful person in this series of episodes, or in her episode, I guess. And that was whatever the case may be.
Yeah, whatever the case may be. Yeah, where we get a little bit more backstory on Kate, where she's again, we'll talk about it specifically, but it's kind of the one where they find a case and she seems to like it was the Marshall's case, and there's something in it she wants, and we learn a little bit about what she was kind of doing to get that right.
Kind of, I don't know, man. I've kind of really changed my opinions on her because she seemed really trustworthy, but she's done some really shady stuff to multiple people. Not just on the island and in her backstories as well.
Right.
But I'm really looking forward to seeing what Michael and Walt, how they mend their relationship or form a relationship. And
I'm
glad I finally got some clarity on what's going on there, because now it actually does make sense. And man, it's just heartbreaking what Michael's wife did to him.
Those are, and so you're a guy with a family with kids. Mm-hmm. I first watched Lost years ago when it was on DVD, and then watched it live. But, I was in college, right? And so I have found, as I've watched the show since then, and particularly since I've had kids, like the stuff with Michael and Walt hits me differently. And I don't know, maybe I'm bringing my own baggage to it, but I just know for me, that it hits me that way. And I feel like you say, like just this idea that like Michael, couldn't be with Walt. Like I found that whole thing heartbreaking. So I'm right there with you. Even though Michael is kind of like, it's for me, I'm torn. I'm a huge John Locke fan. I think I've admitted that. That's my bias. I'm Team Locke all the way. And Michael is kind of a dick to Locke, like a lot. And now again, I'm not on the island with a son trying to survive, but I sort of feel like some of it's unwarranted. Like he just kind of sees Locke and thinks he's weird, and so he kind of just doesn't want Walt hanging around with him. And I don't know. I've always been turned off by that.
Hopefully that'll change going forward because he helped him save his son and stuff.
That's right. That's true.
I don't know, but yeah, it's. I mean, as a father, I know we'll get there, but as a father, I think it really changes the way you look at a lot of things, and the way that the mom just took the kid and was like, no, it's my kid. I'm going over here. It's really, really awful thing, to think about that he just really couldn't do anything. I mean,
yeah. It's that stuff's kind of tough to watch on the because there's been other shows or movies whenever there's like stuff with kids now, and I hate being like that because it reminds me a little bit of there's a I don't know whether I forget. Are you a Family Guy? Did you ever watch Family Guy?
Yeah, I've seen a good bit.
I haven't watched it in years, but one of the episodes I had seen is like where Brian finds out like he has a son. Do you remember that episode? And he's basically acting like a douchebag the whole episode. Like they start talking. I forget what they're talking about. They're talking about like somebody getting hurt, and he's just like, "Oh gosh, when things like that happen now, I just think, what if that was my son?" And they're like, "Well, yeah, but it wasn't." He's like, "Oh no, don't even say it." Like, and he's acting just like he's acting like a real douchebag. So I really don't want to come off that way, but I think people who are parents may have similar experiences to you and I, where if you've watched something before you were a parent, or even if it was your first time watching it, stuff with kids, stuff with kind of mom and dad dynamics. They just hit you differently. I think every movie and show and book and whatever you ingest, you always sort of hold it against your own life experiences. So it all adds up. Here's actually a question for you, because now that you've seen 15 episodes now, I feel like you've seen enough that this question will kind of make sense. But one of the things Lost does pretty well, or at least I think this has been something that like the showrunners have talked about a lot in interviews, is that like obviously there's the island storyline, and we talked last week about just kind of when they were coming up with the show, how the idea was we would have an island storyline, but they needed some way to kind of quote unquote delay the storytelling. But the way that they did that is made all the characters really interesting, and gave them secrets and gave things that the audience would want to know and learn about. So, but every character's background is so different, and so I want to harp on Kate for a second, because she's kind of a good example of this, where the writers used to talk about writing Lost. It never felt like they were trapped in any particular genre, because when they were writing like a Kate episode, they kind of got to write like The Fugitive. And so it kind of goes from being like, oh yeah, we got to write Lost every week, to like, no, this week we get to write The Fugitive. Whereas, we have a Jack episode coming up. It's like an episode of House, or so, I mean, not really, but you know what I mean. Like it's like a doctor show one week with Jack. The Kate episodes are like The Fugitive. Sawyer is like a con man show or something like that. It's interesting. The Saeed is like a military drama, right? Like, I'm wondering, are you enjoying that aspect of kind of the flipping genres from week to week, or do you even perceive it that way? Are you catching that?
Yeah, I do enjoy it. I was kind of worried early on, because I was like, I bet this flashback stuff is going to continue for a while, and I was thinking that may annoy me a little bit, just jumping around so much. But they do a really good job with it. Especially, there's a few places I want to bring up in this series of episodes where they do a good job with it. And
that's as good a segue as any.
Yeah.
So let's dive into. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I didn't bring my my book. Maybe I'll send my wife a little note. Because I've been reading the episode descriptions from the official Lost Blu-ray set. When you told me you were ready to go, Jay, I was so excited. I ran right downstairs. But
well, you were mentioning the different stories they were telling. I feel like there may have been a little Stephen King thrown into this one with Walt. Walt is able to shine, something, whatever you want to call it.
Yes, I would very much like to talk about that episode because. And well, it seems like it's funny because you seem to have hit right on it. And again, we'll dig into that episode very specifically when we get to it. But I think there was a lot of the episode is done kind of. It's very subtle.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are we seeing? Like, it's not like super obvious. I mean, I think it's obvious if you're watching. Like, if you're someone who enjoys genre, I think you look at that and you'd be like, "Holy cow, this kid's like Firestarter or something," right? But again, it's done in such a way that it's not heavy-handed, and I feel like it's debatable. It's one thing I'll just note, and again, I'll keep spoilers out of it to the best I can here, but I'll just simply say, in Lost's first season, they tried very hard because the network was antsy about it, but they tried very hard to avoid quote-unquote genre-type stuff. So there were things they wanted to put into the show, and ABC would be like, no, don't do that. That's getting a little that sounds, I don't even want to be specific right now about what those things were, but I'll just say that, as any good show, it grows, it evolves, the storytelling matures, its success gives them more freedom to do things. But Walt is a good example where I think the reason they played it so subtle is that they were kind of nervous about bumping into the network. And you using Stephen King as an example, I think, is a really great way to talk about it. It sounds like your head is already in the right space because Damon Lindelof is a huge Stephen King fan.
Mm-hmm.
And he has talked a lot about, in Carrie, for example. Carrie just is special. It's not like they ever say Carrie was Struck by lightning and she's got these magic powers now. It's no, when thank you, I was watching. I heard your question. Beautiful assistant brought me what I needed.
Thank you.
There's no explanation for why Carrie can do what she does. I mean, the one sort of explanation, it's not really an explanation, but it's sort of like Carrie Carrie having her first menstruation is kind of what triggers it, but it's not like that's why it happened. That's not what causes her ability. She just is special, and she has these powers, right? I mean, I think it's the same thing with Firestarter. That girl just kind of has these abilities. And I think you see that a lot in Stephen King's work, like The Shining. That Danny Torrance just has that power. There's never, he's not bit by a radioactive spider or something. He just has that power. So I'm maybe saying more on this subject than I should, because I don't want to get into spoiler territory with you, but I would just say that Walt would belong to that kind of genre of people where Walt is special. And, he do things? I don't know. It kind of looked like he could. But it's that sort of mode of there are just people like that in the world, and maybe one of them is in our story here. So I don't know how you feel about that.
It's interesting you say that because, after this show, pretty much everything J.J. Abrams was attached to was paranormal in some way, So it's now this.
I think that's his. Well, even Alias, I don't think it got quote unquote supernatural. And I confess, Alias is one show I haven't watched. I think you were an Alias fan, weren't you?
Yeah, I liked it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you tell me. I mean, as I understand it, Alias got a little weird, but weird doesn't necessarily mean supernatural.
It wasn't really paranormal, but there were a lot of episodes where they, made it a horror style, chase or escape or something. So they really, mostly it was just, straightforward, action.
Right.
I really can't even remember what the main plot of the show was, but Jennifer Garner fighting governments and people and stuff. That was basically the.
It was also the only experience with a stripper that Dwight Schrute had, as I recall, from The Office.
Really?
You remember that? Don't you?
I remember that, but yeah.
When they were getting the stripper for Bob Vance, who ultimately didn't accept a lap dance from her, and she gave it to Michael instead. But when they were getting that stripper, Jim asked Dwight, he's like, "Oh, you have any experience with this?" Because I guess Jim didn't either. And Dwight's like, "I've never been to a strip club, but Jennifer Garner has played a stripper like 30 times on the fantastic show Alias." And Jim's like, oh, "Okay, so no, got
it."
Yeah. But anyway, now I have the Lost book. Stalled for time, but I think it was a good use of our time. So, episode 9, Solitary. Also, by the way, just for your interest, Jay, written by David Fury, who was the writer of Walkabout, the fantastic episode Walkabout. When a golf bag is found in the wreckage, Hurley constructs a primitive golf course to give the survivors a much-needed recreational outlet. In the jungle, Saeed's attempt at exploration ends when he falls into a trap. He regains consciousness in the lair of a mysterious Frenchwoman named Danielle Rousseau. Saeed's overtures of friendship are rebuffed, and Rousseau resorts to torture, believing him to be part of a mysterious tribe already living on the island. So this episode of Lost, Solitary, kind of digs into a couple of things that we've been exposed to in the show already, which is in the pilot, we heard a transmission from a French woman that she's been shipwrecked on the island. All of her crew are dead. They were infected, and then they figure out that it has been 16 years that this message has been running on the island. So now with this Saeed episode, we finally encounter the French woman who sent that message. And similarly, there's a couple other new mysteries that pop up in this episode. So Saeed is basically putting himself in exile. He feels sick with himself, ashamed at torturing Sawyer in the previous episode, Confidence Man. And he decides, you know what, I can't be with you people. I shouldn't have done what I did. I just need to kind of go. And I'll be useful. What I'll do is I'm going to just walk the island, so we kind of know where the heck we are and what's going on. Well, Saeed walks along the beach and encounters, and this is in kind of the mysteries I have listed for this episode, Saeed finds a cable on the beach. The cable is running out of the jungle into the ocean. When Saeed follows the cable, that's when he runs into Rousseau, so he doesn't really get to explore it very much further. But what could that be about? I wonder. I don't know if that's going to go on your list of predictions, Jay, but that's a mystery. First off, what was kind of your reaction to Saeed encountering the French woman? Oh, Jay, I think you're on mute, my friend.
Sorry.
No problem.
It's nice to finally figure out who the French woman is.
Yeah.
Because, that's been one big mystery so far.
Yeah.
And she's not that pleasant to be around.
I always just wonder what she smells like. That's just, I don't know. She's like living in the jungle by herself. She's still practicing good grooming. She's, shaving under her arms and everything, which is, by the way, that's one of the things on Lost that people used to talk about a lot. Like, Kate is always wearing like sleeveless shirts, and so is Son, and their legs are always smooth. Like, where are they how are they taking care of this? Like, have they been using the same rusty blade for like 4 months or whatever?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's shown Locke shaving with his knife, so
that's true. That's true.
At least it's
maybe that's what Kate's doing. She's using that Bowie knife.
Is that possible? Oh wow, seems hard to do.
Right, but so Rousseau gave us some other. I would say that in what she said to Saeed, there's a number of kind of mysteries, interesting things to talk about. Danielle talked a lot about her team became infected. That's like, but as Saeed explains, he's like, well, we're not sick. What are you talking about? So add that to the mystery pile. What's this infection she's talking about? She also mentioned something very interesting, the Black Rock. Mm-hmm. Any ideas what you think the Black Rock is, Jay?
I know Claire wrote about it in her diary. She had a dream about a Black Rock. I really don't have any idea.
Good connection. That's true. Later in the episode, the next episode, Raised by Another, that does pop up again. You're learning, Jay. You're picking up the show here. This is awesome. That's true. That's right. That is referenced there, and she had it in a dream. So that's I don't know. That's weird, right? And then there's a couple other things, but if let's just talk about within the context of Solitary. Danielle references the fact that she had a baby named Alex, and the baby was taken by others on the island. Now, Saeed, I think, again, he's a smart guy. Like, he sees this poor woman. She's been living on this island for 16 years. She's clearly not right. I think his immediate gut instinct, and even we, the audience, probably, hear her talking like this and think, man, like, she's just nuts. Like, that's what's going on here. But when Saeed finally gets away from Rousseau at the episode's end, he sort of freezes in the jungle for a moment, and Saeed hears whispers, or he thinks he does. Mm-hmm. So there's something going on there. Any thoughts about that?
Anything I say is probably going to be wrong, so
hey,
I really don't.
That's part of the fun, Jay, is hearing how wrong you are. No, I'm just kidding. But that's so. But really, there's like a whole can of mythology spilled over on us with this episode. Just in meeting the French woman at all, and then hearing her tell her story, which I would just note for you, and I think the people who are watching I think everybody would have this context, but I would take what she says at face value to an extent, but she's been alone for 16 years. How much does her insanity maybe twist the story she's telling? That would maybe be the only note I'd have on that.
This show like directly goes against the grain of like a traditional narrative. So, anything, they're intentionally trying to keep you guessing, and you're going to guess wrong. So, this is what it comes out to me. Comes across to me.
Right. So the other part of this episode, other than kind of the great island story introduction to Danielle Rousseau, was we finally got Saeed's backstory, and it should be noted. This was not a story. This was not why Saeed was in Australia. Mm-hmm. Following on from Sawyer's story in the last episode, this is a story in Saeed's past when he was already a member of the Iraqi army, the Republican Guard. He's a torturer, but Saeed encounters his childhood love, or a girl he knew as a child, and he falls in love with her. And it's kind of a solve to a mystery that we didn't explicitly identify, but Saeed has been occasionally in previous episodes looking at a picture of a woman. Mm-hmm. We now know who that woman is. It's a woman named Nadia, a girl he knew growing up. And I'm wondering, was there anything about, based on what we learned in the episode with Sawyer last week, was there anything about Saeed's backstory that you thought either matched what you were thinking? Was it a twist? How did that hit you?
Yeah, it pretty much matched what I was thinking. Because he doesn't come across like a bad guy, but he did some bad stuff. So he's made some mistakes, and he's got to live with that.
Right. And in some ways, I think Saeed comes across as a romantic. In some ways, he's, he fell in love with the kind of the target of his, potentially the target of his torture, and even just the way he behaves on island is a little cameo appearance by my cat Darla here. It's just, he, like you say, he carries himself like a thoughtful, passionate person who doesn't, at least on the surface, seem like, oh man, this guy's like a badass torturer. Like I think that's sort of a surprising twist with his character. So, and I'm trying to remember, because I was trying to find them, but I couldn't find any. Were there any good Sawyer nicknames in this episode?
In this episode?
Yeah.
I wrote some down, but I didn't make them specific to an episode.
Okay. That's all right.
Stay Puffed. He called Hurley Stay Puffed.
Yeah. Yes, he did.
It may have been this episode, actually.
Yeah. But yeah, so this episode, well, actually, so the other part of this episode that was just kind of a nice touch was Hurley finding the golf bag and then kind of setting up a golf course. And I think that it was kind of a nice character episode, and I'll actually note that this episode and the next episode actually swapped in the episode order. Originally, that they kind of had some like the order of episodes was different, and then they switched them. And the reason they switched them was that based on the events of so we can jump to it. The next episode, a Claire-centric episode raised by another. The writers, I think, rightly said it doesn't make sense that after this Claire episode, in which, at the end of it, Claire is abducted, that the castaways would be like off playing golf. Like, that's stupid. Yeah. they wouldn't be doing that. So, but let's dive in. So we now have our first Claire flashback episode. And we get into, as you noted earlier, a little bit of dream storytelling. Claire's having terrible dreams. And like you say, some of what is happening in her dreams are things we've heard before, like Black Rock. There's also some creepy Locke imagery where he's got one black eye, one white eye. But Claire feels like someone is attacking her. And Jack attributes it to, hey, this is a chick who's in her, third trimester. She's in a stressful situation. They're on a desert island, a tropical island. You're maybe you're hallucinating, or you're just having dreams that are out of control because you're in kind of a high stress situation. And actually, let's go to the official description. But because my description, I'm sure, will pale. Oh, I had it mostly right though, Jay. Claire is haunted by nightmarish visions that her baby is in danger. When the nightmares seem to come true and she appears to be attacked, no one believes her. Hurley suggests that they compile a list of the survivors' names, and Boone suggests that it will save time to use the flight manifest as a reference. When Hurley compares the two, it leads to an unnerving conclusion about a passenger named Ethan Rahm. So as you noted, the character of Ethan got introduced, and then subsequently we learned Ethan was not one of the passengers on Oceanic Flight 815. Mm-hmm. You referenced him earlier when we were talking about Danielle Rousseau. You have a theory that he might be Alex Rousseau's lost child.
Yeah. I mean, apparently
But,
there's just a ton of other people on this island.
well, I don't know who's on this island, Jay. So far, we've only seen Ethan. But clearly, so definitely we know Ethan's there, and we know he wants something with Claire. One thing that always sort of annoyed me about this is that Sawyer goes by Sawyer, yet Hurley, like, I don't know that Hurley ever confirmed with him what his real name is at this point in the show.
He probably wouldn't have told. He wouldn't have told Hurley.
Yeah.
Just to be a butt, to be a jerk.
Right. Right, just to be a butt. That's exactly right. But, what this episode also features is Claire's flashback, essentially what happened to her. And I would actually say of all the passengers' backgrounds, Claire's might be, at least to a point, kind of the most trope, the most sort of cliche seeming, where she was young, she was in love with this guy, he got her pregnant, they were gonna have a baby, and then he bailed on her. Mm-hmm. Where it maybe starts to twist away from being more common is that Claire goes to see a psychic who is adamant that Claire has to raise her baby. And he's very weird and creepy about it. And at the end of the episode, Claire seems to believe, because the psychic changes his tune, that he knew the plane would crash, and that's why he told her to take that particular flight. So that's sort of interesting, but I don't know. What was your thoughts about Claire's backstory in this episode, as we kind of learned?
Well, with the psychic, I mean, he's like, she needs to crash on this island for some reason. Because he could obviously see that the plane was going to crash. There was no couple in America. And she was about to sign the documents and used, 2 or 3 pens. The ink didn't work, so it's kind of like a sign that she shouldn't do it. But, man, what her boyfriend did to her is another really shitty thing to do.
Yeah.
Because she didn't want to keep the baby.
Yeah, he was the one who was like, oh, we could do it together.
And then, 6 months later, 7 months later, whatever, he, can you not see this is not working?
Yeah.
He just is one of those guys that doesn't understand that lives can be different after you have a baby, because he already wasn't happy before the baby was there. Yeah.
I had an argument, which, social media is no place to discuss anything of import, but I had an argument with somebody about Alamo Drafthouse. Where I live, there was, in fact, this is sort of a COVID-related story, which I try to avoid that just to help people focus on something else. But there's a theater by my house that basically it closed. Mm-hmm. They left business. They sort of didn't have the money, and they had to close down. And so, but we knew that another theater was probably going to buy into the space simply because it's like, movie theaters are sort of like single use, if it's built to be a movie theater, that's really all it can be, unless you just tear it down and do something different. So we were pretty sure another movie theater was going to come and take its place. I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
It turns out they can double as churches, because we had one shut down and they turned into a gigantic church now. So.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Anything could be a church.
I guess anything could be a church. That's true. But in our case, it was another movie theater who eventually took it. But at the time, when we were kind of debating what chain or what could be there, I just sort of suggested, hey, it'd be great if we could get like an Alamo, because this place is kind of like around the corner from where I live, and so I just thought, like, hey, that'd be cool, because the Alamo Drafthouse that I go to it's not like 4 hours away, but it's like 20, 25 minutes away. It's it's a little bit more of a drive, but if I had one in my neighborhood, hell, I'd be there like every day. I mean, maybe not in the pandemic, but you know what I'm saying.
You don't want people
this
to die.
Guy started like harping on it and talking about it's like like that it's like all like I forget his term for it. I want to say uppity, but uppity wasn't what he said. But making it seem like it's like really like upper crust, and they have all these rules and stuff. And I was like, the only rules they have at Alamo are don't talk during the movie and don't use your phone during the movie. Mm-hmm. So unless you're trying to talk during the movie or make phone calls or text during the movie, like, I don't know why Alamo is going to have any problem with what you're doing. And then he talked about how, like, well, you can't like bring babies to the theater. And I was like, well, for one, that's not true, because at Alamo Drafthouse they actually have during the weekdays like specific periods of time where they like actually don't have such strict rules. They leave the lights on at like half power, and they show kids movies, and it's half price or whatever, and it's a great environment. And then I think like after 6 o'clock maybe, I don't think like young kids can be in there, but like accompanied by a parent, and there's some other rules with that, but it's frankly, it's common sense. It's essentially that, you're here to watch a movie. We don't want people talking. We don't want people making like lots of noise. We don't want phones. And he made a comment later. He's like, well, yeah, but like, what if you have like a well-behaved infant or something like that? I was like,
there's no such thing.
Yeah, I was like, there just kind of came a point in talking with this guy where I was like, you know what, man? If it's not an Alamo, that's fine. It's probably better that you and me are frequenting different movie theaters anyway, because I don't know what you're talking about. Like, it's insanity. Well, this was all because we made the comment about life changing.
Right.
He seemed to be just really angry about the fact that if you have a baby, he's like, well, he actually made the comment at one point, well, what? Like, I don't get to go to a movie for like 2 years, and I'm like,
get a babysitter.
Well, that's exactly what I said. I was like, well, you could get a babysitter. That's what me and my wife do. But yeah, maybe if you can't get a babysitter, like,
yeah,
you had a baby, man. Well, I didn't tell you to do that. You did that.
I don't know, man. It seems like a lot of people in our society these days feel this way, but it's just disrespectful to others, man. Like, I mean, you're ruining their experience with your crying baby, It's, and I had kids that age. We just didn't go to the movies for a little while, Like,
it's my wife and I used to go to the movies all the time.
Yeah.
When we had kids, like it's like we talked about in terms of like binging, and we can't binge TV shows and movies like we used to. Like, you got other things to do. Do I like it all the time? No. I wish I could go to the movies whenever I wanted to, but it's life, man. You gotta deal with it. Anyway, back to Lost. Claire's boyfriend, I think Thomas was his name. Kind of a grade A douche. Yeah, like not cool.
An artist too. An artist too.
Those damn artists. But actually, he has like a real whiny line where he's like, I haven't gotten to work on my art lately. He has like some line like that. That's really such a douchey line. So in this episode, I really I wrote down kind of 2 mysteries, or at least I think are mysteries. If you have others, or you think maybe we need to rephrase these, we can do that. But did the psychic know about the plane crash? I actually rewrote that a few times because I wasn't sure like the best way to represent like what I thought the mystery was, but whatever. Because one way you could read it, Jay, and I don't like, is that the psychic was adamant that Claire raised the baby herself.
Right.
He could have made sure she took that plane because he knew it would crash and she'd be with the baby, as opposed to completing the flight in Los Angeles and giving it away. That's possible.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's one. And then the second one would be, who is Ethan? If he wasn't on the plane, then he was already on the island. Who the hell is Ethan? what's going on there?
Yeah, that's the big one, is who is Ethan?
Yeah.
Like what's his motivation? Like why can he fight so well? Because he beats the shit out of Jack. I mean, just like, hands down, you know?
All this information is there, but upon rewatching it, so let's actually jump then. Let's go to, so the next episode, basically that episode ends, Raised by Another ends, where Claire starts having what she thinks are labor pains in the jungle. Charlie finds her and he's trying to help her. He tells Ethan, who he thinks is one of them, hey, go get Jack, she's gonna have the baby, everything, whatever. And then Ethan comes back and it goes black. Clearly Ethan is not there for good intentions. Anyway, next episode we find out Hurley, that all this sort of happens at once, but Hurley arrives and says, hey, Ethan wasn't on our plane. His name isn't on the manifest. And then Saeed is also showing up saying, hey, I heard, there's other people on this island. I heard whispers in the jungle. And then, we understand, the stuff with Ethan happens. So they go out, the next episode, all the best cowboys have daddy issues. This is a Jack episode. They go after. And basically this turns into a focused episode around, obviously it's a Jack-centric episode, but Jack and Kate and Locke and Boone go after them. Locke can track in the jungle, so he's tracking their trail, Ethan's trail, trying to catch up to them. At a certain point, they do split up because Kate can kind of track based on her childhood with her dad or something. But they split up. And there's actually a funny line I wrote down that I wanted to talk about that happens with Locke and Boone, because there's some other things that happen in this episode too that are pretty cool. But the part let's jump ahead to your comment. Let's come to that right away. Jack eventually does catch up with Ethan, or rather, Ethan sort of is laying in wait for Jack. Mm. Originally, I had sort of the same thought that, holy shit, what is Ethan's deal? He hands Jack his ass.
Yeah, yeah.
I think if you really watch, remember, this episode, most episodes of Lost are a day in the life. This episode sort of picks up at the end of, the previous day, which had already been kind of about a day. Jack had been up and doing stuff. And then remember, when Jack hears Claire's missing, he goes charging off into the jungle, sprinting, and remember, Locke catches up to him and says, well, good thing you were running in a circle because we were able to find you. My interpretation is that Jack is not at 100% when he runs into Ethan. He has exhausted himself in the jungle. He's tired. And maybe even a little frayed at the nerves because he's got adrenaline running. What the hell is happening?
Right.
And Ethan, what we can say about Ethan now, if he wasn't on the plane and he's from the island, perhaps more familiar with the terrain, this is a guy who's kind of prepared for the situation. So I don't know that there's anything particularly special about Ethan. I think it's really more that Jack wasn't at his best, would be my...
Well, looking at these two guys, Jack's obviously in good shape and stuff, and Ethan just kind of looks like a, lanky nerd. We just wouldn't think it would go down like that.
Right.
But yeah, I guess he can, all those, components added together, give him an edge up. But Jack didn't even land a punch, man. He punched and he swung and he hit him. It's come on, man. Hit him once, please.
Yeah. It was that. That is sort of I always thought that too. It's sort of why can't Jack even land him? The reason I wanted to explain all that is because I do want to say there in the fandom there were a lot of people who were oh man, is Ethan supernatural?
Yeah.
Does he have powers?
That's what I thought. Yeah.
I don't want to give spoilers, but I don't want to send you down any wrong streets either. I think my interpretation is perhaps the one you should kind of think about.
I mean, not a whole lot would surprise me, man. I mean, you know.
Well, like I said, I'm not trying to. I don't want to, like, ruin the mystery. I really don't. But this is one thing where, kind of like I said before, like I'm lost because you used to just watch one episode a week. People had like a week to think about things. Mm-hmm. This was one case where I remember people did a lot of thinking and theorizing, and it was a lot of people like you, Jay, who were like, why the fuck can't Jack hit this guy? And like, he seems so strong and he seems so fast. And I'm letting some of my knowledge seep in, and I told you I wasn't going to do that, but I feel like I don't want you to go down any wrong roads. And it's just it's Occam's razor. Jack was not at his best. Is really how I would talk about that.
We finally found something.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
We finally found something Jack can't do.
Yeah, like Jack wasn't at his best, and again, I still would say like Ethan kind of was a little bit more prepared, right? Like Jack is just running blindly into the jungle. This Ethan guy, from what we've seen about him here, seems like he knows what he's doing, right? So that's what I'll say there. But oh, sorry, you have a question?
No, I was going to say, perfect timing with the manifest, because had they known Ethan wasn't on the plane, had they not known that he wasn't on the plane, they wouldn't have ran after Charlie and Claire.
Yeah.
Knowing something's wrong, and oh shoot, I was going to say something else. I forgot. Go ahead.
Well. And maybe something I'll say will jog your memory here, but interesting point. So the last episode ended, we didn't really know what was going to happen. This episode, things become clearer to us in the sense that it seems like whatever Ethan wants, and remember, Claire was having like either premonitions, she felt like someone was attacking her specifically. I think we've kind of had it confirmed, whoever Ethan is, he wanted Claire. Mm-hmm. He did not want Charlie. Charlie was kind of just extra baggage. And the reason we know this is because Ethan strings Charlie up to a tree. And even though I've seen Lost several times, I actually wonder, did you think Charlie was dead?
I knew that, I forget the actor's name, but I knew he was in the show for a while. So I knew, okay. Yeah, I knew he wasn't going to die there. But the whole time he was, doing the chest compressions on Charlie, I was thinking back to one of the earlier, or the first Jack episode when, the patient dies. Wait. Yeah. When was it where the dad nicked the artery? This may have been this episode. When the father nicked the artery and Jack was trying to bring the lady back to life, or trying to save her life. I kind of paralleled those two together because, she died, but, Charlie finally came back at the end.
Yeah.
We finally find out what Jack did, the mom, what you did to your father. So
that's right. Yeah. So just taking a diversion from the island story for a second, the Jack flashback is essentially the story of how Jack's dad came into surgery drunk, and he injured a patient, and Jack had to come in and try to save that patient, but the person died anyway. And at the end, after seeming like he'd been convinced to kind of help his dad bury it, at the end, Jack kind of has a crisis of conscience and tells them what happened. And so we've now kind of gotten an answer to what made, why was Christian in Australia? What did his mom accuse him of doing that was so bad that sent his dad to Australia, and seemingly he drank himself to death.
His dad was fired, probably lost his license and stuff too, and that's when he kind of went off the deep end and just went to Australia, right?
Right. Well, that seems to be the implication. Yes. Yeah. But yeah, to your point, that's actually a good point. Is that like Jack could not save the woman though, whereas he was able to save Charlie. But all I was going to say is that even though, as someone who's watched the show before, and you just know because you're generally aware of pop culture, you may not have watched the show, but you have a general sense. Like even though I know Charlie doesn't die, like it's the way it's cut and edited, and the way that scene plays out. Like every time, I'm always thinking like, "Oh shit, Charlie's dead," and then I'm always kind of like, "No, I know, like I know he doesn't." You know what I mean? But I just think that's really well done that they were able to. Because I mean, again, like I can't remember. Do they go to a commercial in the middle of that, or it's
so.
like they're? I feel like they do. Like they go to commercial and then they come back and then he gets him up again.
There was a few times like that when they went to commercial right at the crucial moment. I was like, man, you know?
Yeah. But so kind of the other thing is that so basically to help one of the things that splits the group. So as I said, Jack and Kate and Locke and Boone are the ones after them. But at one point, it looks to Locke like there are two trails, which might suggest that, like, you know, Ethan tried to make like a dummy trail or something like that's going on. But he sees two trails, so they split up. Locke and Boone go together, and Boone hasn't been, you know, he's been kind of a dud up to, you know, through a lot of this, but you know, he goes with Locke, and Locke treats him like a human being, maybe the first person who has on the island. The line I wrote down, just because I think it's funny, Locke is marking their progress in the jungle with strips of, like, they have like a red T-shirt or something, and Boone makes a comment like red shirt from Star Trek. He's like, oh yeah, the red shirts. Like those are the guys that always used to go on the missions with the captain, but they'd always die. And Locke says, sounds like a piss poor captain.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite Locke lines.
Yeah, I mean, Boone's a saint, man. Boone's like he's just, he wants to help. Like, I mean, God, the guy has like no flaws yet. You know, I'm sure they'll come up, but
he seems, I mean, if he has any flaw, it's that he's maybe overestimated his abilities.
Yeah,
like he wants to help. He tried to save Joanna. Right. He couldn't do it. And then him trying to do it and failing is what prevented Jack from saving Joanna. Right? And so, you know, and then like in the pilot, remember he was like trying to look for a pen to do a tracheotomy. Yeah. Like he has good intentions, but he's kind of off the mark a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, if someone's in a riptide or a current or whatever, you can't just swim out there and grab them and come back. You're going to get caught in the current as well, right? I mean,
right.
I've never been a lifeguard before, but I would think that would be something.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But so other interesting thing. So again, Jack rather encounters Ethan, gets his ass handed to them. They don't find Claire. Mm-hmm. You know, Locke and Boone also don't find Claire. But at the end of the episode, when Locke was going to continue trying to follow the trail in the dark by himself, he throws Boone the flashlight, and clumsy Boone misses the flashlight. The flashlight hits something that sounds like metal in the ground. And they kind of, you know, push the mud back and see there's like some kind of metal surface. There is something in the ground there. And Locke, if I remember, I can't remember his exact quote, but it's something like we're gonna have to find out what this is, or something like that. So they have found something mysterious in the ground. What is that?
Started off their beautiful friendship.
Yeah. So Locke and Boone are kind of a pair. Yeah. So, but again, those were the two mysteries I kind of had, which is, why did Ethan kidnap Claire but not Charlie? And what did Locke and Boone find? Mm-hmm. Anything else that stands out to you as a good mystery?
I don't think so. Pretty much, you know, who is Ethan? What?
Right. I had that from the previous episode, but I mean, it's a mystery. It applies, right? There's actually a funny exchange in this episode, if I remember correctly, with Sawyer and Walt. Like, Walt is giving Sawyer an update on what's happening, and then Sawyer says something like, "Great, why am I getting the evening news from an 8-year-old?" or something.
Well, he has a great nickname there too. He calls him Tattoo.
That's right. I couldn't remember. I thought he calls him Chachi at one point, but maybe that's somebody else. Okay.
I guess that's a oh shoot, what is that show with the little person tattoo?
Fantasy Island.
Fantasy Island.
Yeah.
They just did a horror movie remake out of that. I don't know if you had a chance to watch that.
I saw the commercials. I never watched it, but yeah, I saw the commercials for that.
You can skip it.
I think I will. But the I think that brings us to a close on that episode. Like that sort of covers. I guess the only thing I would note, another call out because it kind of furtherance of a plot in a future episode, is that Locke and Michael kind of have another run-in, where Michael wants to come along on kind of a mission to find Claire, and Locke is kind of dismissive of him. Saying like, "Hey, listen, we got a lot of people as it is. Like, not right now." And Michael takes umbrage at not being included, so he kind of wants to form his own group and go look for him, which turns into.
He says, "Well, I'll form my own group," and then Locke says, "Great, go north, or you go south, or something like that."
Yeah. So again, I mentioned that only because it kind of gets a continuation of that sort of tension gets paid off later. But the next immediate episode. Oh, sorry. What's your question?
I was just going to say, I have a question as to why, Saeed's told them about the French lady. Why don't we immediately go to where she is? Because that's probably where Claire is. I mean, we know that's where someone else is. So, I mean, if they've lost the trail, why not just go there? It's kind of the way I was thinking. But
I think it's a good question, actually. I mean, I don't. Keep in mind, Saeed just got back. Like, all this kind of happened at once.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. Like, and Jack, Mr. Just run into the jungle shepherd, like, he didn't really ask too many questions. It was just kind of like, hey, this guy's not on the manifest. Hey, we're not alone on this island. Claire's missing. And Jack just sort of runs off. Like, there wasn't a lot of planning that was going into it from that perspective, Jay. But the next episode, whatever the case may be, was written by Damon Lindelof and Jennifer Johnson. So that's interesting. This is a Kate-centric episode. Enlisting Shannon to help translate the papers he stole from the Frenchwoman, Saeed makes a startling discovery. Meanwhile, Kate and Sawyer find a briefcase in wreckage submerged in a hidden lagoon and find themselves pitted against each other when it becomes clear that the contents of the case hold vital information about Claire's past. So, this episode, by the way, I would note this is another episode with a good. Lost had a lot of great guest stars. Mackenzie Aston features. I almost did it, Jay. Never mind. He does not feature in this episode. Mackenzie Aston will later appear in a Kate episode. I'll say that. I was mixing my Kate episodes up.
So it starts off, and they find this beautiful waterfall and little lake, and they're like, they seem like they're really kind of hitting it off as friends or possibly romance. I don't know.
Kate and Sawyer, you mean?
Kate and Sawyer, yeah. Sorry. And they go for a swim. That's when they find it's like a piece of the seats from the plane with the people still in the seat belts, so they're dead under the water.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where the suitcase is.
Right. Yeah. Kate sees this suitcase under, so just understanding how planes lay out, those people were in the row in front of Kate.
Right.
Because that's typically where the luggage, if you're going to stick something under the seat, that's typically where it would go. And they're dead, but the suitcase is there. Kate is very interested in it. Obviously, she tries to play it off, but Sawyer takes the case and makes it his mission to get into it. Kate clearly wants this briefcase. And so since this is a Kate-centric episode, sort of the story with Kate is all about how she was after something in a bank, and it sort of seemed like she was part of a bank robbery crew, but in fact, she was using these guys really to just get something from out of a safety deposit box, which, spoiler alert, fast forwarding to the end of the episode, Kate was looking for a toy airplane. This means something to her. And that's why she hooked up with these guys, who she subsequently beat up and shot and left for the police while she made her escape. Again, another the fugitive episode for Kate. But like you were saying earlier, like Kate clearly, whatever her original crime, like she's fallen in like with a bad crowd. Like, she may have good motives somehow, but she's clearly got a rough way of going about achieving them.
I don't know why she doesn't just tell Sawyer. I mean, I guess she just knows Sawyer too well. Like, look, there's something in there I'd like. You can have the rest of it. Just let me have it or whatever. I mean, I feel like Sawyer is like, the kid on the playground that acts out just to get attention. Like like he only wants this case because she wants it. Like he wouldn't have even cared about it otherwise,
I'm not a psychologist, but I wonder if Kate sometimes like she like tries to put on this like persona, like she's hard, or like, she doesn't, maybe she doesn't care or something. And maybe feeling like she'd have to explain why she wants a toy airplane out of that briefcase. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out myself, and that's the only thing I could figure out is that she doesn't want to have to explain that to anybody.
Yeah, that makes sense. That does make sense. But Claire, man, I'm having a hard time putting my finger on her character because I really can't make sense out of it. Because before I was like, okay, she's committed a crime. It happens sometimes. She's sorry for what she did or whatever, but she's a nice person. This episode really made me change my thoughts on that because, I mean, she really screws over a lot of people in this episode. I mean, the bank robbers, I get that, but they're bad people anyway, whatever. So they don't matter to her.
Yeah.
But when they go to get the wallet, Jack has to dig up the air or whatever his title was, the guard,
the marshal, the marshal.
I was gonna say air marshal. I didn't know if that was the right word. Dig him up to get the wallet, and in the process, like she gets it out. She gets the key out without Jack seeing it somehow, and he knows it.
She kind of just palms it, like a magician trick kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, why are you doing this to Jack? He's like the only person you trust on this place, but I don't know. It's really conflicting, her character.
Well, honestly, perhaps the more interesting thing about it would be Kate only wants this toy airplane, which, by the way, that's a mystery that I wrote down for this episode. Why does Kate want the toy airplane? Especially when in the case are like 3 handguns.
Yeah.
So like the really like the big news would normally be, hey, there's handguns in here. Like, maybe we could hunt some boar or, protect ourselves from, people kidnapping pregnant women or whatever. But Kate doesn't want any of that. She wants this toy airplane. Why does she want that? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the first mystery.
Well, I mean, it belongs to a man I killed. They really turn up the melodrama at the end. And, so then you're like, well, okay, now who did she kill? Now that's another mystery.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that's true. Like, she does say that. I still think it's like it belongs to the man I killed, but to your point, there's definitely more of a story there, and we may just find out what that is. The other thing, and this is more something that I don't know. It might not rank to you as a huge mystery, but I would call it out. I've sort of said to you that I'll call things to your attention that you might want to pay attention to that maybe only hawk-eyed viewers would have noticed on the first run. one of the other things that happens in this episode is that the tide comes up the beach and starts washing the plane wreckage away. So the castaways have to move their camp, basically. And Saeed seems kind of confused because he's like, I don't understand. Like, the tides.
Why did it come in so fast?
Yeah, like, what's happening here?
Something's up, man. Something's up with this place because we got the compass going haywire.
Well, and so actually I have that. You're fast forwarding there, but it is the next episode. But
something's up.
Like Saeed discovers in the next episode that when Locke gives him a compass. Actually, Saeed tried making his own compass, and then Locke gave him a compass. Both of them are behaving strangely. North is not the direction it should be, essentially. And Saeed doesn't understand why this is. And I think we, the viewer, are wondering, what does that mean?
Sorry, I didn't mean
that's No, it's fine. It's fair. That's like a moment out of the next episode. We can now ignore it when we talk about it. But
the moons control the tide, right? Isn't that correct?
I thought so.
The moons. Yeah, the moon controls the tide. I thought is how that worked.
Yeah.
But it's like it won't. Why is it all of a sudden getting this high?
Right. And why would compasses be behaving strangely? Like, so what is going on? So actually, why don't we can just jump ahead, because again, the Kate episode was fairly now they have a case of guns. That's maybe the big plot development. Jack keeps the key around his neck. The next episode. Real
quick, I liked watching Sawyer try to open the case.
That's a good sequence.
A bit of a comedic relief there. He goes up to the top of this cliff and drops it off, and it still doesn't break.
Right.
But also wanted to mention that there's a little bit of chemistry between Saeed and Shannon.
Thank you. I'd written a note about that. I glossed over it. So kind of the other, and again, I mentioned it in the synopsis, but Saeed, we know Shannon kind of sort of speaks French, and when Saeed escaped from Rousseau, he grabbed a bunch of her stuff, including some maps and some papers she had around. So he's been working with Shannon to kind of translate some of her writings, just figure out because she has a map of the island. It's not to scale really, but she kind of had a map of the island. There's some things written on it. He wants to understand it. And to your point, Saeed, there seems to be kind of something between them. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't Shannon end the episode singing Across the Sea or something like that? Mm-hmm. Maggie Grace has a nice voice.
It's nice to see her character getting a little bit more screen time and a little bit more backstory that's going to continue. But
and fleshed out rather than just bitchy blonde.
That's what
she's actually a person.
She's been a bitchy blonde in the background. That you see. 2 minutes of screen time for each episode, maybe.
Yeah. Usually it's her in a two-piece bikini, so I don't mind it. But
I would say the biggest mystery on this show is why are there so many beautiful women on this island? Sun, she was voted one of the most beautiful women in the world multiple times.
Yeah.
Maggie Grace. I mean, all the actresses are very attractive.
Yeah.
It's that's the biggest unbelievable part of this show so far.
That is the mystery. You are correct. So the next episode, Hearts and Minds, which I was given a little bit of that lost history lesson last week. Hearts and Minds was the first episode where Carlton Cuse officially got a writing credit on the show. And Carlton Cuse co-show ran Lost with Damon Lindelof. Boone's growing jealousy over Saeed and Shannon's friendship threatens to erupt in violence until Locke steps in. Drugging Boone, Locke leaves him stranded in the jungle, where he must not only confront his feelings for his sister, but also the menacing creature that stalks him from the shadows. Which is a little misleading, I think. But essentially, this episode was, in addition to being a Boone flashback, although it's kind of Shannon too, but it's really Boone it's his flashback and Shannon figures into it. We see more of Locke and Boone's relationship as they're kind of hiding out in the jungle, trying to dig up this thing they found in the ground, which at this point they kind of found like it's like a door. There's like a little window.
Yeah.
That they've gotten access to now, and they're trying to get in, and not having a lot of success just yet. But Locke is kind of treating Boone a little bit like an apprentice, but he's also kind of trying to get Boone to come out of his shell, to like be his own man, and trying to help him let go. So Boone, even though he's like with Locke and he's helping him do stuff, Locke sees that Boone is kind of like obsessed with Shannon, unhealthily so, and he the scene where like Locke there's probably a name for like the knot he like ties Boone in,
Sure. Yeah.
where he's got like the thing behind him and he's got the arm in front of him and he has to like reach the knife to cut himself free, but he basically sends Boone on like a psychedelic journey of self-discovery.
Yeah, so Locke is like taking it upon himself to give everybody their spiritual journey that they need, because he's done similar things for other characters.
Yeah, Jack, Charlie.
Yeah, Jack and Charlie both. Huh? Okay, and so that was just a trip at the end. Like that was not none of that actually happened. The monster and Shannon. None of that.
That was all in his head. Basically.
So, when he
woke up and like after Locke had put the stuff on his head, like, and he was kind of just like sitting there, I think it eventually kind of took hold of him, and he kind of went on this trip and experienced some stuff there. Yeah.
I think Locke just knows this island is magical or something, because why would you tie this kid up, or this young man up in the woods where we know there's some giant monster running around, there's wild boars, we have polar bears, who knows what else is out in the jungle.
Well, remember, Locke has seen it and he doesn't seem to be afraid of it.
That's true.
So Locke is probably of the opinion that like if he were to come across it again, or if it were to come across Boone, it's not anything to be afraid of. Like being afraid of it's the wrong approach. I would guess that's what he thinks. But it's a good point, because everyone else is afraid of it, and it certainly killed the pilot. But I'm actually not sure. Keep in mind, I don't think that's widely known. Like, I'm not sure Kate, Charlie, and Jack told people that it killed the pilot. Like, I don't know if they know that. So I'm not sure Locke knows that.
Let me ask you this. Do you think Locke did that solely to give Boone his, whatever, a walkabout, his experience, to become his own man? Or did he only do it so he wouldn't tell Shannon? Because that was when it all started, was when he said, well, Shannon's asking questions, I'm going to have to tell her. She can keep a secret,
I do think this was a way for Locke to assert control over Boone. I think you're hitting on the right thing. Where, it's like it's hard to decouple some of this stuff. Like I definitely think Locke is self-interested. I think he didn't want Boone to tell her. But I think he also, even before that, if you remember, he had kind of been noticing that like Boone was sort of paying attention to Shannon and being like, "What do you care?" I mean, he didn't say it like that, but essentially, he was already sort of picking up on this vibe. And I think when it crossed over into potentially threatening what he's doing is when he kind of decided to act. So it's a fair question. Like, was he really doing it for Boone's own good, or was he doing it to kind of protect what they're, the secret they have?
I mean, I don't like how it's coming across like Locke thinks he knows what's best for everybody. I don't really like that. Because that's kind of what it seems. He's like, like every situation, he knows the exact right thing to do.
Well, I think I would note it's not like Locke is necessarily making people do anything. Like in Jack's case, he saved him, and then he kind of just said like, "Hey, I think you just need to finish what you're doing." But he basically said, he's like, but he was going to go continue looking for water himself. In Charlie's case, remember, he basically gave Charlie the rules. It's like, listen, I'm going to give you 3 chances, and I'll give you this heroin back if you really want it.
Right.
But he was trying to kind of make Charlie make the right decision by himself. And if you remember, when Charlie did ask the 3rd time, Locke gave it to him. And then Charlie, it's funny, like it was intentionally done ambiguously. We didn't talk about it at the time, but in that episode, did Charlie throw the heroin in the fire or did he drop it? Because like it's sort of shot and done in such a way, it's sort of hard to know, like, did he flick it or did he lose it? I think that's intentionally... Yeah, like I think that's intentionally ambiguous. Like, did he really make the right decision?
I kind of assumed he did it himself.
I did too, and then when it's one of those things where, like, as I've rewatched it, you kind of watch what he does, and it's all very subtle. Like Dominic Monaghan, give the guy credit for acting, for the nuance, like because he kind of does it, and then the way he sort of stares, it's a little bit like, oh my God. What did I just... I think it's intentionally ambiguous. So I'm not saying I'm necessarily right that that's what that he accidentally dropped it, but I think I think you were supposed to be asking, wait, did he mean to throw it, or did he actually, he's proving to Locke that he can make that decision? I don't know.
Because you're originally thinking he's just going to take it and then start using again.
Yeah.
But he throws it or drop whatever, but you would think he would have a bigger reaction if it was not done on purpose. Like you would at least, like, I don't know, make a frown face or something.
I think it was shock. Well, again, if in fact it was an accident, I think it was more like internal in his brain, like, like that screaming. A little bit of like Abed on Community when what was it? Sorry, we shouldn't be mixing shows too much, but remember when they like introduced him to that like British show and everybody like killed themselves at the end, and he was like, he freaked out. It might have been a little bit like that. But I'm sorry. And when it comes to Boone too, like, now it's true he did assault him. he knocked him out and filled him full of island hippie drugs. But I mean, he did that, and then he kind of like walked away, and he let Boone let Boone kind of have a trip and sort of like have an experience where Boone came to realize, what was happening and what was important.
Right.
And so, by the way, this is I'm not have come to your judgments as you will. I'm just what we've seen. My reaction to the idea that Locke is sort of making people do things or has an opinion about what everybody should do. Like, I certainly think he does have one, but from what I've seen to this point in the season, it really feels more like Locke is trying to help people make that decision for themselves. Sometimes with some pressure, but ultimately Charlie, had to go through that. Jack had to go through that. Boone had to go through that. And when they came out on the other side, it's not like Locke, put Boone against a tree with a knife and said, like, if you tell her, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
Boone kind of realized he didn't need Shannon like he thought he did. By the way, we're entirely sidestepping the big reveal episode. Boone and Shannon have been behaving as though, well, no, they are brother and sister, but their backstory is that Shannon's dad married Boone's mom when they were kids. So technically they're brother and sister in they're, what's that? I guess, what are they? Step siblings or how? I guess step siblings, and now their parents have been together since they were kids, but it sounds basically Boone feels fairly strongly for Shannon, and at the end of the episode, they sleep together.
Yeah, you got my live reaction from that.
Yeah. So it's not quite the Targaryens because they're not technically related, but
yeah,
because they grew up together, it's a little skeevy. That's for sure.
So he's in love with Shannon romantically, you know.
Well, given that, like, it certainly feels like he feels for her. He loves her in more than a brotherly way. But it's it's a little twisted. Like that last scene with them, like in the hotel room or whatever, that's a pretty dark scene.
Well, it showed them like kiss, and I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. And then the next is them like putting their clothes back on. I'm like, oh my god, they slept together.
Yeah.
Oh man, it was pretty jarring to me just because I wasn't expecting it. But
yeah.
So she's been drawing these schemes with these random guys to get money from Boone. So like basically, she'll call Boone and say, hey, I'm in trouble. This guy's doing this, that, or whatever. He flies out immediately to wherever she is and pays these guys off to leave them alone, get out of her life. And turns out that it's been a scam of hers this whole time.
Yeah. And that is the answer to why Boone, that's why she was in Australia. Right. She was with some dude. And that's why Boone was in Australia, because he was coming to save her, which apparently she didn't actually need. Can you remind me, was there a scene where Boone was in like a police station in this episode?
Yes. And Sawyer
did you notice anyone else interesting at the police station?
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting. And
yeah, Sawyer was in the background of that scene.
We still don't know why Sawyer's in Australia.
That's right, we do not yet. But this is the first, like that was really the first direct evidence that we knew he was in Australia because he was on the plane, but like that's the first time we've seen him in Australia, and also the first time there's ever been a really explicit connection between characters pre-island. So that's interesting too.
Did you ever watch Dexter?
No, I didn't. Other than maybe the odd episode, or my parents sometimes watched it.
Well,
and I might sit.
Well, first of all, I'd say it's a really great show. I'd watch at least like the first few seasons. Some of the best television I've ever seen, honestly.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is not really a spoiler because the show sucks by this point. But they have this romantic thing, and they're the same way. You know, Dexter was adopted when his dad found the mother murdered. Yeah. So they grew up together as brother and sister, yet they have this romantic. It's a whole thing they do with one of the seasons. It's stupid, but I was getting kind of vibes like that in this episode. I was really weirded out by.
That is a good comparison. I didn't think about that. Like again, I haven't seen Dexter, but I know.
Check that show out though.
I know of it.
You really would.
I've avoided it. I've avoided it lately because I heard all the hullabaloo about how it ended. And it sounds like the first, like you say, the first few seasons are very good, and then it sounds like its last, three or more seasons are kind of garbage. And so I've sort of been like, do I really want to make the investment if I think I'm going to be really disappointed?
It's not good, but man, the season with John Lithgow is amazing. Like he is really, really great. That's either 2 or 3. But the first few seasons are great, man.
I will keep that in mind. So the only mystery I actually had for that episode was what causes the compass to behave strangely, which we talked about before. But any notable Sawyer nicknames? I don't remember Sawyer featuring heavily in this episode.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I was going to say, one note I made about this episode was I think I've seen Boone get punched in the face at least 5 times so far. Because her Australian boyfriend beats up Boone pretty good too. Yeah. I've seen 4 characters on the island, and then the boyfriend punch Boone in the face.
Yeah. By the way, too, Saeed and Shannon's friendship seemed like, per your comment about the previous episode, Saeed and Shannon seem to be turning into something real. Which, by the way, and I don't know, maybe it's just me. I felt like Saeed was a little bit of a dick about it at first. Like, he knows Boone is her brother, and they've been on this island, they crashed in an airplane, and I don't know, he's just kind of like staking out his territory. And I just remembered sort of feeling like, I don't know, man, I might play this a little bit. You don't really know this Boone guy. Like, you guys sleep like 10 feet away on the beach. This guy might like come and slit your throat in the middle of the night. Like, it seems to me like you're playing this entirely wrong. But I don't know if that's just my.
I feel like a lot of the characters in this show have been assholes, like intentionally, more than once, for really no reason. You know, it's almost one of those shows where all of the characters are unlikable. It's not, but it's close, or they have their moments. You know.
They certainly have their moments, because like there are episodes where I love Kate, where she's, she generates like emotional moments, or it's interesting plot. And then there's other episodes where I'm just like, will you shut up and go away? Like, you're driving me nuts. But it's a good point. Yeah,
it's kind of like Breaking Bad. Like Breaking Bad was a show like that for me, where I basically hated all the characters. Like in my own way. But, they would usually do something to redeem themselves.
It's funny, like, Hank is a character that I actually didn't like very much but even after he killed Tuco, I didn't like Hank very much. I think it wasn't until he got, like, was recovering from being almost killed by the twins that I started to like Hank. But he was really just kind of like, I'm sure I'll be called like toxic or whatever, but I'm one of those people that I guess I just really felt for Walt. Like, a lot of people seemed like they wanted to make Walt like into this evil guy right away, and I feel like, yeah, there certainly did come a point in the show where like Walt crossed the line.
Yeah,
but like his initial thing was like, I have to take care of my family. I have to, provide for them. Which, I'm sorry, maybe that's an antiquated concept, but I sort of understood. I felt like I understood where the character was coming from.
Right.
And so even when Walt was doing some evil shit, a lot of times he was like doing it to like some pretty bad people.
Yeah.
So it's kind of why, like, even on The Shield, like, I was kind of on Team Vic Mackey for many seasons until, like, maybe I think when Lem died was when I was kind of like,
yeah, oh yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Well, because Lem was the one guy on the team, even though he did the bad shit too, who like seemed to genuinely have a conscience about it. Yeah. He still did it a lot of the time, but like he always seemed like he was like spitting up blood, like he had an ulcer or whatever. And I feel like when he died, that's kind of when the wheels came off the Vic Mackey cart. There.
Real quick, I'm not going to derail this too much. But the real villain in Breaking Bad is Skyler. I think everyone knows that.
Oh man, good thing we don't have higher viewership, Jay. You would have just gotten. We'd have to cancel you.
But
she's a victim.
Do you remember the episode after what's Skyler's sister, the cop? He's married to Skyler's sister. Hank?
Marie.
Is it Hank?
Hank and Marie.
Yeah. Do you remember the episode where Hank he's recovering from after he gets shot, and it was disregard Marie, collect minerals or something? Like, remember he was collecting rocks and like treating Marie like shit. Like that was like a T-shirt that said that. I thought it was really funny.
I've seen that shirt. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
No.
So we come to the final episode that you watched this week, and it was a humdinger for a number of reasons. It had one of the classic Lost cliffhangers, but also the episode itself was really interesting. So the episode entitled Special, another one written by David Fury. He was prolific in this first season of Lost. Michael becomes concerned when his son Walt begins to develop a special bond with Locke. Michael orders Locke to stay away from his son. Determined that the island is no place to raise a boy, Michael suggests to Jack and Saeed that they build a raft, but his suggestion is scoffed at. So this episode is ostensibly a Michael flashback, but Walt definitely gets some attention in it. And in it, we learn, like we were talking about earlier, we kind of learn what kind of the background is with these guys. Like, we always sort of knew that Michael wasn't very comfortable with his son. He didn't seem to know all that much about him. We know Walt's mom died. Now we kind of know the backstory, which is that Walt's mom took him from Michael, basically. She kind of got a job overseas. She got a great new husband, and kind of left Michael in the dust. And he hadn't seen his son for many, many years until she developed, I think like a blood disease or blood cancer or something.
He just said some disease, blood disease, I think.
Yeah, and like, the way, if I'm not mistaken, it's like she was diagnosed and like dead in a week. Like, so it all happened fast, and it's one of those things where, like, so the guy that was Walt's, his stepdad, basically, in what seems to be like the biggest douchey move of all time, shows up at Michael's place back in New York because they now live in Australia. This is the mystery. Why is Michael in Australia? He was going to get his son Walt. But this guy, Brian Porter, shows up at Michael's place, basically trying to give him Walt back. And he just says that he's like strange, he's odd. And so I think we all think he's kind of a douchebag, but as we were talking about earlier, we sort of spoiled this part of the conversation a little bit, but Walt seems to be quote unquote special. Walt is looking at a book of birds, and all of a sudden that bird he's looking at in the book hits the window of their house and dies. Walt is reading a comic book he found, a Spanish Flash comic book where there's a polar bear, and lo and behold, a polar bear on the island attacks him.
That's where the polar bears come from.
Yeah, Walt.
That's where they come from. Okay.
Right. But so actually, in my list of mysteries, I did just note that it's sort of a continuing mystery, but we were sort of reminded again that, well, it's really that there's more than one polar bear. So Sawyer killed the one polar bear in the pilot. Here we have encountered another polar bear. It attacks Walt.
Need to get Walt to think about some sort of a ship.
Yeah. Like, dream of a plane, Walt.
Or, 5-course meal or something.
Yes. But so it's really more of a renewal of the mystery, but where the hell did the polar bears come from? And then I sort of asked it, but I think we've sort of already admitted it, like, is Walt special? I think he is. Like, it seems pretty clear to me that there's something with this kid. Like, he seems to have something.
And this island is probably just going to amplify it, right?
Well, and that's, again, if we go back to what Locke was talking about, hey, this island is special. There's something here. So that maybe, yeah, if you're a person like Walt, whatever Walt is, maybe being on this island kind of, it does something, makes that stronger. I don't know, but it's just an interesting thing. And now that we've had Walt and Michael's backstory, we know why they were in Australia. We are down to Hurley and Jin as far as not knowing, who they are, what they were doing in Australia.
We finally get the Michael episode. This is the episode I've been waiting on since like day one.
Yeah.
The stepdad says sometimes when he's around, things happen.
Yeah.
And he says that it was like the mother's dying words that he wanted Walt to live with his father, his real father.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, I was like, did he actually say that, or he's just telling Michael that because he's afraid of this kid and doesn't want to raise him?
I would file that under. We don't ever really get an answer to that question, but I would say, based on how that guy's behaving, I don't trust that he's being truthful about that. I think you're right, because Michael says it to him. He's like, dude, you're his father. Like, I don't know him. Like, you've had him ever since he was like a baby. Like, what are you talking about?
He said, I haven't been his father since he was 2 or something like that.
Yeah, or whatever. Yeah. So, yeah, I think. Again, I can say this. Like, we don't ever really get an official answer on that, but I don't think he's telling the truth. Like, I think he was just saying that. Because everything.
It doesn't seem like she would even care about that, because she hasn't cared about Michael this whole time.
Exactly right. Exactly. That's such an odd thing that all of a sudden it's like, oh no, have him live with his father. That's stupid.
How hard would it be to give the guy, a month out of the year or something with his son? It's such bullshit. She's like, it's my kid. I'm leaving. I hate when people say stuff like, as a father, we were talking earlier, that I'm involved in this process, man. Like, that's half mine. I'm half,
Yeah.
It's the mother always gets all the credit, but it's like, hey, man, I care about this child also.
Yeah. My wife deserves all the credit in the raising of my children, but she certainly didn't just through osmosis create them. That's not how they got here.
Well, I mean, it's one thing to go, to Australia, and he still gets to see his son. What she did is downright awful, man. Like,
yeah.
Not only did she never talk about the father, never mention Michael, never anything, never let him see the boy, but she didn't even give him the letters that he wrote.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty rough. But just in terms of like Michael and Walt's relationship, it was kind of a nice turn, because Walt has been pretty rough on Michael, I'd say. Like, and I think we, the audience, until this episode, were probably more like on Walt's side, because Michael's kind of a dick sometimes.
Yeah, he is.
Whereas Walt, just a cute kid. He wants to be friends with Locke, and Michael won't let him. He plays games with Hurley, and he's got the cute dog. But, when you see this episode, I think it gives you kind of an empathy for Michael, where it's like Walt has been hard on him, under kind of a false assumption.
Right.
That Michael's just some dude who showed up, like, after, like, intentionally leaving. Like, and there's that whole, again, the whole story we've already talked about, that, like, it wasn't Michael's choice. He wanted to be with him.
Right.
And
it's
just not how
the thing is, he didn't mention any of that to Michael either. He could have said, "Hey, dude, your mom stole you and never let me see you." He didn't say that. He didn't say it like that.
In fact, that's true. Michael played it pretty. Like, if you remember when he said, because I think Walt asked him, like, I don't understand. Like, why didn't she? I forget if it was about the letters or just like, I don't understand why she did that. And Michael explained it in about as objective of it was basically just like, because that's kind of not how your mom wanted it to go. Or I forget the line exactly.
I mean, it's really something to be commended, because he's making it to where it's not tarnishing his memories of his mother.
Exactly right, and that's again, like we've sort of had, and this is what Lost I think is so good at, is that like we're presented characters who like this is like Sawyer. Like, man, Sawyer's just a douche, right? He's an asshole. When you actually learn Sawyer's backstory, you're like, oh man. Like, it doesn't make him not an asshole, by the way,
right.
But it kind of gives you like, well, it's not like he didn't just start that way, right? And Michael, it's that same thing where we've kind of had an opinion of Michael based on what we've seen. Once we get a look under the hood, we kind of realize there's a lot more to this guy. And this is just one of the things that I think is so great about the show, in that, and particularly when you watch it the first time, because as much as like the mysteries about the island and stuff are cool, it's really getting to meet these people and challenging your assumptions about who you thought they were before you know the whole story. Because like Locke is just a great example of that. Or you see Locke and you think you know who the guy is, and you peel that onion back, and it's like he's a dude in a wheelchair who, all of a sudden he can walk now. Like what, he was working at a box factory. But were there any nicknames in that episode? I'm trying to remember if he had any run-ins with Sawyer, because like you said, he called him Tattoo in the previous episode. I can't recall if he bumped into anybody in this week's.
I didn't notice if he did. But one thing I wanted to mention, you said wheelchair, made me remember. I was a big fan of Harold Perrineau from Oz.
Yeah.
His character, 8, 9 seasons, however long that ran, he was in a wheelchair the entire time. And this episode of Lost, he gets in a really bad car accident, or gets hit by a car, and he's in a wheelchair. And I'm like, oh, he's probably thinking, damn it, now I'm going to be in a wheelchair again.
That's
fourth time in a wheelchair.
There weren't really any. I'm trying to recall. Were there any mysteries? Like we didn't, like Locke and Boone didn't get any further with what they're digging on in the ground. Again, we learned about Michael and Walt. There wasn't perhaps the biggest, and it's again the mystery, I guess, would be at the close of the episode.
Oh yeah,
they bump into Claire. That's the final thing. Claire comes out of the jungle. We have found her. Ethan isn't there, but Claire is.
What happened to Claire? What happened?
Exactly. There's the mystery. Where has Claire been? What happened to her? Which I'm glad that we ended on that, because you get to experience a little bit of the pain that we felt us live watching Lost fans would feel watching episodes like that. But by the way, now that we've kind of gotten through them, I should note to you that everything I told you is accurate in the sense that Walkabout really is the episode that made me kind of stand up and like, okay, like what is this show? Like this is interesting. Like I'm liking this. But it was the Claire gets kidnapped and then Boone and Locke find something in the ground that was like, what the hell is going on here? And where the episodes, like I just couldn't watch them fast enough.
Right.
So that was really where the turn happened for me. And I don't know if anything like that has happened to you or if you felt that way.
At this point, you were watching live, like you were watching on television.
No, this point I was still watching on DVD. So I had the option of like, holy shit, I need to put the next disc in.
So where were you?
Season 2 was the first. Season 2 is the one I had to watch live. And
okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So with that, and actually, Jay, as I'm looking at how the episodes are going to lay out, I feel like I should give you a choice. Because I know we just did 4 episodes. Well, we did 4 we did 4 episodes, then we did 6 this week. The way the rest of the season's going to lay out, we could do, if you did 6 episodes for next week, then the week following that, we could finish season 1, and it would be 4 episodes. Keeping in mind that the finale is counting as kind of like 2 episodes, because it kind of gets like split in half. So I guess I'd let you decide. Do you want to finish? Do you want to do 6 and then finish with 4, or would you rather do 4 and then be able to finish with?
Yeah, let's do 6 and then finish with 4, because I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about the finale.
Okay, that's actually a good call. So the episodes for next week would be episodes 15, 16, 17, and 18. They are Homecoming, which I think that makes some sense given Claire's return.
Mm-hmm.
Outlaws. In translation, I always like when shows do that. Like the episode title is kind of, I don't know. I'm stupid.
Is that something to do with sun, maybe?
Well, no. It might, but it's Lost. The show's called Lost.
Lost in translation. I got you.
Yeah. Actually, that one. If you want, I can give you who the episodes are centric, unless you want to experience that live.
I'll wait. I'll wait and see.
That'll keep me. So sorry. It's Homecoming, Outlaws, in translation, Numbers, Deus Ex Machina, and then Do No Harm.
Okay.
Those are the next 6 episodes of Lost. And I assure you, when you reach the end of Do No Harm, you will feel even worse about not being able to continue. So I can't wait to reconnect with you next week, Jay.
Sounds good.
What you thought about these episodes of Lost? Any departing thoughts for the folks?
I mean, not really. I mean, we're really opening up a lot of boxes and not closing many at this point. I think the Walt having powers revelation is really going to come into play, and that's something that's really interesting. Yeah, I'm just looking forward to more at this point.
Nice. Yeah, I am excited. I'd love to get more of your live reactions too. All right. Well, Jay, thank you for joining me
Absolutely.
As you have so many times before. For the folks that did watch live, the handful of you that was, thank you for joining us. And folks watching us recorded, please leave us a comment with your questions or comments about what we've talked about here tonight. And we look forward to talking again next week about the next 6 episodes of Lost's first season, with I, who have seen the show before, and Jay, who is experiencing the magic for the first time. So, thank you all. Jay, good night.
Thank you.
Folks, enjoy your evenings.